meltdown. It is the cringiest, most uncomfortable piece of tape I've seen in a long time. I'm sorry, but I'm going to. She's supposedly 9 months pregnant in the hospital room, dancing with a big belly.
In early 2025, a woman identifying herself only as DL came forward with a claim that has sent shockwaves through Royal Watch circles and online communities. She says she is the woman who physically carried and gave birth to both of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's children. Not an egg donor, not a medical intermediary, but the actual surrogate. DL insists she has the hospital wristbands, appointment logs, signed NDAs, and payment records to prove it. According to her, she was recruited through a California agency in 2018, placed under strict conditions during each pregnancy, and bound by legal agreements to remain silent. She now says that agreement was broken by the couple, leaving her uncompensated and with untreated health complications. While the Duke and Duchess have made no public comment on DL's specific allegations, the combination of alleged documents, unusual public birth announcements, and existing video clips from Meghan's pregnancies has created an unprecedented mix of suspicion, curiosity, and legal speculation. DL's story begins in late 2018 when she says she was contacted by a surrogacy agency in California with an unusual offer. The client names, she claims, were not disclosed to her at first. Only after initial medical screenings did she learn she was being considered to carry a pregnancy for a high-profile international couple. DL says she later discovered the couple were Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. From there, she describes a process far removed from typical surrogacy arrangements. She claims travel was restricted, medical appointments were booked under coded names, and security staff accompanied her to and from certain clinics. She alleges she signed multiple non-disclosure agreements, some directly with the agency, others with legal representatives she understood to be working for the couple. According to DL, these documents promised generous compensation and long-term health coverage, especially in the event of post-birth complications. She says she completed 2 full-term pregnancies under these conditions, delivering both children in hospital settings with carefully controlled visitor lists. DL alleges that in both cases, she was quickly discharged, contact was severed, and promised payments were delayed or reduced. The hospital wristbands, appointment logs, and bank records she now displays are, in her telling, proof of those events. Crucially, DL says she is willing to undergo independent DNA testing to confirm her biological connection to the children, provided the testing is overseen by a neutral, legally binding process. If such testing were arranged and verified by an independent court, it could conclusively prove or disprove her role. Skeptics argue that without verified documentation and formal legal filings, these remain unproven allegations. Supporters point out that NDAs and controlled medical records could explain why no public evidence has emerged sooner. For DL, the stakes are personal. She frames this as both a matter of truth and a demand for unpaid compensation. For the couple, the stakes are reputational, legal, and potentially constitutional. This tension between unverified documents and the offer of verifiable testing is what makes her claim impossible for the media and the public to ignore. In a space already filled with years of speculation about Meghan Markle's pregnancies. Since 2019, certain online communities, particularly Royal Watch forums and social media threads, have dissected videos, photographs, and public appearances, claiming inconsistencies in the size, shape, and apparent movement of Meghan's baby bump. Critics have pointed to moments where the bump seemed to shift unusually, or where Meghan appeared to bend forward in ways some felt were improbable for a heavily pregnant woman. Supporters dismissed these as cherry-picked frames, awkward camera angles, or the natural variation of maternity fashion. Into that pre-existing climate, DL's claims land like a match in dry grass. Her timeline aligns neatly with the periods when Meghan publicly announced both pregnancies. She says her first surrogacy began months before Meghan's own announcement, and that her due dates were coordinated to match the royal couple's carefully choreographed public schedule. She even alleges that certain unplanned paparazzi moments, such as surprise bump photos, were deliberately staged to maintain the illusion of a natural pregnancy. The secrecy she describes also dovetails with other unusual elements already noted by the press. For instance, the birth of the couple's first child was announced hours after it happened, with no immediate hospital photo call, a sharp break from British royal tradition. The second child's birth was reported days later, with the location kept private. At the time, these choices were framed as modern, privacy-conscious decisions. In DL's telling, they were logistical necessities to conceal a surrogacy arrangement. Of course, none of this proves DL's version of events. But because her narrative fits into a pattern that conspiracy-minded critics have been discussing for years, it gains a kind of gravitational pull. People who are already skeptical now feel they have a missing puzzle piece, while those who trusted the official story are faced with a much more complicated picture. This intersection of long-running rumor and fresh, document-backed allegation is what has turned DL's story from an obscure claim into a rapidly spreading media flashpoint. DL's account is accurate. The legal implications are enormous. Surrogacy agreements in California, where DL says both pregnancies took place, are generally enforceable under state law. They typically outline payments, medical coverage, and post-birth arrangements in precise terms. DL claims those terms were violated, both financially and in regard to ongoing medical care. If proven, that could open the door to civil lawsuits for breach of contract, fraud, or even intentional infliction of emotional distress. There's also a potential ripple effect across jurisdictions. Because Prince Harry and Meghan's children hold titles and are in the line of succession, questions could arise about the disclosure of a surrogacy arrangement under British law. The UK does not permit surrogacy to be carried out for payment beyond expenses, and legal parentage there must be transferred through a court process. If any part of DL's story intersected with British jurisdiction, the legal scrutiny could become international. On the medical front, DL says she suffered physical complications from both births, including long-term pelvic pain and hormonal issues. In a standard surrogacy arrangement, the commissioning parents or their representatives often cover postnatal medical care for a specified period. DL claims this did not happen, leaving her with untreated conditions and mounting bills. She also says that because her name is not on the children's birth certificates, she has no formal parental rights, which is typical in surrogacy, but also no legal leverage to compel further care or payment without breaching her NDAs. For the couple, the stakes are just as high, but in a different direction. Even if DL's claims were proven to be true and legally permissible in California, the public relations fallout could be severe. Royal tradition values transparency around births, and the revelation of a concealed surrogacy, especially if accompanied by allegations of mistreatment, could trigger public backlash, political commentary, and renewed criticism from both media and monarchy supporters. In short, this is no longer just a personal dispute between a surrogate and clients. It's a tangle of state laws, international norms, health ethics, and royal optics, all waiting to be tested by whatever hard evidence, if any, emerges next. DL's willingness to go public comes with a carefully curated set of what she calls proof. In various interviews and online postings, she has displayed hospital wristbands bearing dates and patient numbers, appointment reminder cards from a Los Angeles area obstetrics clinic, and fragments of what she says are payment records routed through a surrogacy agency. She also claims to have email correspondence with legal representatives tied to the couple, in which conditions of the arrangement were discussed, though she has not released the full threads, citing legal advice. Supporters see this as compelling. The hospital items appear aged and used. The dates line up with the children's reported births, and the agency names match known California surrogacy facilitators. For those already inclined to believe her, these artifacts are enough to establish credibility. Critics, however, point out that without independent verification, these materials could be staged, stolen, or misinterpreted. A wristband, for example, shows a name and date, but not who the child's legal parents are. Payment records might confirm money changed hands, but not necessarily the purpose. Even the alleged emails could be partial excerpts, lacking the context that might change their meaning entirely. Online sleuths have taken this further, cross-referencing clinic logos, staff rosters, and the formatting of documents against known medical templates. Some claim to have found discrepancies in font styles and date placements. Others argue that these could simply be the result of multiple providers being involved over time. The central piece of potential proof remains the DNA test DL says she is willing to take. Without it, all the paper evidence will remain circumstantial, persuasive to some, irrelevant to others. But such testing would require consent from the children's legal guardians, and so far, there's no sign of that happening. In the meantime, the battle over DL's evidence plays out in two arenas: the court of public opinion, where speculation thrives on partial glimpses, and the legal system, which demands verified, admissible proof. The longer the stalemate lasts, the more both sides risk losing control of the narrative.